Daredevil has been to prison not once, but twice in the comics. And those stories could not be more different. In one of them, prison is the culmination of some of the worst years in Matt Murdock's life, a sentence orchestrated by the FBI under orders from some pretty powerful people. In the other, Matt willingly turns himself in so he can pay for his crimes as Daredevil. Literally as Daredevil. He actually gets to keep his mask on. These stories explore completely different sides of Matt Murdock, both in and out of the mask. Now, of course, they share some similarities. After all, both of them are stories about Daredevil, a notorious New York City superhero, being thrown into an environment where everyone is out to get him, all for different reasons. The main difference actually starts with who is actually legally being arrested. In one story, they arrest Matt Murdock, in the other, it's Daredevil. Ed Brubaker and Michael Lark's The Devil in Cellblock D is the one where Matt Murdock is arrested by the FBI. For many reasons, but the charges boil down to one thing, being Daredevil. At this point in the comics, Daredevil's secret identity was not exactly a secret anymore. This all takes place after the Brian Michael Bendis run, where Daredevil's real name is leaked to the press. Matt spends a long time denying it, and he continues to do so here, even while in prison. The thing is, nobody really believed him. But nobody could prove it either, not even the FBI. The only reason they were able to arrest Matt at all was because Kingpin cut a deal with them to hand over Daredevil while he walked free. But there wasn't really any hard evidence to convict Matt Murdock for being Daredevil. So much so that when he's sent to Rikers here, it's to await trial, not his actual sentence. Basically, the FBI cannot let this go to trial because once it does, their case will fall apart. Their solution? Buy some time. Delay the trial for as long as possible. Keep Matt locked up, hoping someone gets to him while he's in there. They also kept trying to get him out of protective custody and into the general population. Because that way, if he ends up being killed by one of the criminals that he's locked up with, criminals that he helped put away, then, well, that's one less problem to deal with. The person fighting to keep Matt in protective custody was, of course, his lawyer, Foggy Nelson. Because they can't just put a blind man in Gen Pop. Daredevil or not, Matt Murdock is still blind. He has been for years. Besides, even if he is Daredevil, like I said, no one can prove it. Not only that, but Daredevil was still active, even while Matt was in prison. How is that possible? We'll swing back to that. The point is, the FBI wanted Matt in Gen Pop. Foggy was standing in the way. So Foggy needs to get out of the way, if you know what I mean. On the way out of Rikers, Foggy and Dakota North, a private investigator, are ambushed by some inmates who we learn were specifically hired to kill him, which they did. And this is the moment where everything changes. Because up until now, Matt only wanted to get out of prison and try to go back to his life. But after Foggy's death, none of that matters anymore. Not the trial, not his reputation, not even his secret identity. All he cares about is finding out who was responsible and make them pay. Becky Blake takes over his case, and she isn't able to keep him in protective custody. Because at this point, Matt had been getting into some fights. Not on purpose, but the many inmates he sent to the infirmary, allegedly, made the judge decide he'd be just fine in Gen Pop. If you've seen Charlie Cox's Discussing Comics series, he actually specifically mentions this moment in one of them when Matt smiles just a little bit after being sent into Gen Pop. He even worked it into the show. Very cool. Anyway, Matt wasn't about to just sit around and wait for his trial date like a good little boy. For one thing, like I said, the FBI clearly intends to delay it forever. But for another, he now has something else in his mind. Foggy's murderer. That's all he cares about now. He's on a mission. He needs to find out who killed Foggy, why, and under whose orders. He still denies being Daredevil, sure, but he's a lot less careful about it now. And the FBI are quick to take advantage of that. Their goal isn't to convict him, after all. They can't. Remember that Kingpin had made a deal with them to walk free after he delivered Daredevil? Yeah, so they double-crossed him, and he ended up in Rikers too. But at this point, he and Matt hadn't really run into each other yet. Fisk was in Gen Pop while Matt was still in protective custody, then he was sent into solitary confinement. And yeah, Matt was also in solitary for a time, but obviously they were kept in different cells. But then Fisk's time in solitary ended, and Matt's pretty sure he's the one who ordered Foggy's death, so, anything could happen. Especially after Bullseye is transferred to Rikers as well, thanks to the feds, who again wanted to drive Matt to either make a mistake or get himself killed, whatever happened first. And they weren't even counting on the Punisher deciding to join the party, that was just a bonus. So, just to recap, now we have Daredevil, Kingpin, Bullseye, and the Punisher all in the same building. So this is going great. The other inmates can feel that tension rising up, and they know it's only a matter of time before it all blows up. A riot is inevitable at that point, it's just a matter of when. It actually even forces Matt Murdock and Wilson Fisk to become temporary allies, and they make a deal to escape together when they get the opportunity. Because Fisk did not, actually, have anything to do with Foggy's death. So basically, the answers Matt wants aren't in Rikers, they're outside. Once the riot starts, though, Fisk decided Bullseye should be coming with them, which cost him his ticket out. Matt instead decides to run away with Frank, who was kinda counting on it. Very romantic. Anyway, once he's out, the first thing he does is track down that other Daredevil we talked about earlier, and he finds out it's actually Danny Rand, the Iron Fist. Danny tells him that he was hired to pose as Daredevil while Matt was in Rikers to help with the case. He even thought Foggy was the one behind it, using someone else as a front, specifically a lawyer called Alton Lennox, who also happened to be the last guy who visited Foggy's killer before he was murdered. From here, the story basically turns into a manhunt. Matt tracks down the guy all the way to and all around Europe, following a trail that keeps getting bigger but eventually leads him to the mastermind behind everything, Vanessa Fisk. Vanessa wasn't originally part of this life. She wanted nothing to do with it at first. She even left Wilson because of it. But eventually, she came back, which led her to do some pretty horrible things, including killing Richard, her own son. Doing so made her ill, to the point that when we catch up with her in this issue, she doesn't have much time to live. She tells Matt how and why she did it all. Revenge. Revenge for what he and her husband have put her through all these years. But her goal wasn't to kill them. Well, she wouldn't actually complain if that was the outcome, but her goal was for Matt to find her so she could offer him a deal that would cost him everything he stands for. She'd give him his life back. He could go back to being Matt Murdock, attorney at law. He'd have his career back, his office, even his best friend who, what do you know, isn't actually dead. But in exchange, Matt would get Wilson Fisk out of prison. Because then, whatever happened, whatever Wilson did, whoever he killed, that blood would be on Matt's hands. It would be his fault. Matt refuses. After he leaves, though, Vanessa still decides to help him. Well, help him. All the recent problems in Matt's life go away. Foggy comes back, they get to go back to being law partners and live happily ever after. Vanessa had assumed that once Matt realized what she did, he would end up doing what she asked. And he does, as a way to make up for everything he's done to her. Fisk agrees and decides to leave the country. The deal was that he'd never come back, that he would live the rest of his days trying to honor her memory instead of going back to being Kingpin. Which he does, obviously, but that's a completely different story. In Brubaker and Lark's story, Matt spends most of his time trying to leave prison, to try and get back to his life, and then later to try and get justice for the supposed death of his best friend. Years later, though, another Daredevil story would flip that idea completely. This time, he walks into prison willingly. In Chip Zdarsky and Marco Chiacchiero's run, Daredevil turns himself in to the NYPD. The reason why he does this is actually the entire premise of this run. Back in the first issue, Daredevil accidentally caused the death of a robber named Leo Corraro. It was a mistake that completely broke him. He spends a long time feeling guilty and beating himself up over it, until he decides that's not enough. He needs to pay for what he did. He needs to face the legal consequences of it. The law is like this guy's whole thing, remember? This is very different from the first time he went to prison, though. Because now, not only he's the one who decided that he should, but he also got to keep his mask on. Through the arrest, his trial, all the way to his prison cell, and until he gets out, he gets to keep his secret identity. Due to a new law introduced in the previous run, superheroes can legally testify in court without revealing who they are, which means that Foggy Nelson and Kirsten McDuffie, his lawyers, can argue that Daredevil itself is a legal identity, so he can be sentenced as Daredevil. And if you're curious as to how no one suspects that Matt Murdock disappeared around the same time Daredevil went to prison, well, he didn't. Mike Murdock was there, pretending to be his twin brother, Matt. Yeah, don't worry about it. The point is, Daredevil goes to prison and is fully willing to finish the 2-year sentence he's been given. As you can imagine, though, not everyone is thrilled about it. Obviously, the inmates don't like him after he's put so many of them away, and like the guards, they think he's a bit of a coward for getting to keep his mask on and his identity a secret. I mean, for all he wants to argue that he's paying for what he's done, he's not really, is he? Once he gets out, it's not like Daredevil needs to hold down a job. He doesn't need to deal with the social stigma of being an ex-con in his day-to-day life. Matt Murdock will just slip back into his life, like nothing ever happened. The other inmates don't get that same luxury. Even the warden doesn't like him because Daredevil put his son away many years before. Daredevil might want to be in prison, but it's no surprise that prison doesn't want him there. And it isn't long before there's a plan to make sure he doesn't survive it. The inmates, along with some guards, decide to set up an ambush for him. They poison him and take him outside, hoping to catch him weakened and off guard. Daredevil manages to fight them off, but he barely escapes with his life. And he's sent to recover in a hospital back in the city. While there, he's offered a deal by the FBI. Which, yeah, is a little ironic considering last time they were trying their best to keep him in there. But anyway, they want him to investigate the death of a few prisoners due to unsanctioned labor. And in exchange, they'll commute his sentence so he gets to be free again. Daredevil agrees to the investigation, but not the deal. He wants to serve his full sentence. Then he goes back to his cell to figure out a plan, trying to lay low because he's still recovering from his injuries. By then, though, the word is out that the warden will give preferential treatment to whoever finishes the job on Daredevil. So, with a bounty on his head, a mission to complete, and really nothing to lose at this point, the next time he's taken into the warden's office, Daredevil puts his plan into motion. Because people are dying, and somebody inside, most likely the warden, is responsible. And he can't just let that slide. Daredevil tells the warden that he knows everything, and promises to destroy him. Also, he's sent into solitary, because it's conveniently located right below the warden's office, so he can eavesdrop freely. After a week of listening to all the warden's conversations, he was able to learn that the prisoners are dying in the prison, on the lower levels from something called resid. With this new information, and after dealing with the guards that were sent to finish him off, Daredevil goes to investigate. As it turns out, resid is a drug designed to make people more violent, and the prisoners became its test subjects, which is why they were dying. The goal for resid was to dose the inmates who were leaving, who had served their full sentences. So then they would go back home and spread it to others, bringing in more arrests, more prisoners, and of course, more money. During his investigation, Daredevil accidentally released it inside the prison and got infected along with all the other inmates, triggering a riot. Now, the finale of all of this is a lot less exciting than the build-up. So much so that I've been struggling with writing this recap. After everything we just talked about, the conspiracy, the dying inmates, the experimental drug, the prison riot, with Daredevil himself being affected with this drug, the prison story just kinda stops. Well, okay, during the riot, Detective Cole North is sent into the prison to negotiate at Daredevil's request. It wasn't really a negotiation though, it was more of Daredevil confronting Cole about all of this with resid, and how the system is broken, etc. They fight for a bit, and during it, Daredevil finds out the Bullseye is loose in the city while he's in here throwing hands with Cole. So he decides he should be out there, actually, and he escapes. He just leaves to fight Bullseye instead. To be fair, this is all part of a bigger story involving Elektra, Kingpin, obviously Bullseye. I didn't get into it because this video is about Daredevil in prison, and of course, none of that involves Daredevil in prison. And that's the problem here, right? Like, the prison plot doesn't really get an ending, it just gets interrupted. Like, it gets folded into a completely different story, and anything that was still lingering from it just gets resolved off screen. It's just, I don't know. I don't like this run. I could make a full video complaining about it. And I will, just not for a while. Anyway, Daredevil did find out what was happening with the inmates who were dying, so the FBI offer was still standing. This time, he decided to accept it, his sentence gets commuted, and just like that, Daredevil is out of prison, so, yay. Look, maybe this story works better for you than it does for me. I definitely prefer the Devil in Cellblock D, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you liked the video and you like discussing Daredevil, please consider subscribing. This channel is all about that guy. And look, here's a video about him that YouTube thinks is right for you. Go check it out. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, and I'll see you next time. Bye!